Okay, I've got some questions here from the fierce fiction people to answer, which my cat seems to want to help with, so just bear with us. Okay, first one was how old was I when I knew I wanted to be an author? Probably seriously about 18. I'd kind of tampered with acting, but didn't have the starvation techniques to do that. And I sort of did a lot of writing when I was a child, so I think it was natural that I'm going to get rid of this cat. I would end up writing books, I think. That was, it just seemed natural route for me to go. Question 2, is Sarah Silverwood my real name? As it sounds like a fantasy writer, very good question. Not my real name. I write adult thrillers and horror under my real name, so Galance decided that I needed a different name for my YA, which makes sense. So we came up with Sarah Silverwood, me and my editor. How long does it take from original idea for a story to written manuscript? Depends on the book. For me, about 3 months, I think, once I've got the story sorted in a vague way. But I'm quite fast, and obviously I don't have a day job, which when I had a day job, it made it... I was probably about 8 months writing a book when I wrote my first sort of 4 or 5 books, horror books. But this one, Double-Edged Sword, I think was about 3 months. Yeah, the cat's back. Who was my hero or heroine from fiction, and what book were they in? Tricky. I think I liked books rather than characters as such. I didn't have one that I particularly... it felt a real affinity to. But I loved all the C.S. Lewis books and a lot of Stephen King's books. I loved all the characters in those, especially It, I think, where they had lots of young kids that you could identify with all their different issues. What was my inspiration for writing Double-Edged Sword? This came from when my best friend was pregnant. She wanted to go on one of these London walks, so we went on a London walk of Clerkenwell. And there was loads of little bits of history there that I'd never heard of. And they have an old folks home in Charterhouse Square, and they have the House of Detention, and the Old Bailey obviously was on that route. So I kind of, as we went round, was thinking this would be a great setting for a book. So I just, used it. And she was pregnant, so we used. They'd been mucking around with names, and he's now Hayden William Smith, but he was Finmere Tindwick Smith for a little while, simply because Finmere and Tindwick are ridiculous town names near where we live. So childish friends, but it's worked all right for me. Will there be a sequel? Yes, there is. I've handed the second one in, and I'm just once I've done my next adult book, I'll be starting the third one, and then that will be it. It'll be a trilogy. How do you know that you have enough story for, say, 3 books when you start writing a trilogy that it won't go to a 4th book? Discipline. I did think originally maybe 5, but I kind of think 3 is enough. It's enough to keep people interested, and like his Dark Materials trilogy, I think once you start thinking in terms of trilogy, you plan a big arc, and then you plan what happens in each book separately, remembering that the characters have to get to there. So it is a disciplined process. It's like a professional process. Who has influenced my writing career most? Probably Stephen King in the early days. Now I read a lot of different things. I read a lot of crime novels. I love Philip Pullman stuff, Neil Gaiman, Mike Marshall Smith. A real mix of people have influenced. Oh, Daphne du Maurier, John Wyndham. The list goes on, but those are probably the main ones. The inspiration for the character Finn, I think I've just answered that really with the question before. Do you write by hand or use a computer? I often do my notes by hand and then use a computer to type them up and flesh the book out. But when I wrote the first Double-Edged Sword, I did write it longhand for some reason, and I don't know why. I'd write longhand all week and type it up at the weekend. And I'd never done it before, but it just seemed to happen that way. What comes first, the characters or the situation? I think that's tricky, actually. I think maybe the characters, or that there's something that's going to happen to the characters. What if there was this person in that situation? So for me, I think maybe they kind of come together. The two things come together, especially with the Finmere book, the Double-Edged Sword trilogy. They, having done the walk, and the idea that this baby was abandoned on the steps of the Old Bailey, not knowing where he came from, it was yeah, I think the two things went hand in hand with that one. Don't really have a favourite heroine or favourite baddie, so I can't really answer that one. But I always like the baddies. I really do. I like to make bad characters quite interesting. If I could have written any book from the past, which book would I choose? I think... difficult. The Stand by Stephen King, and probably quite a lot of... The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, I think, would probably be up there. And The Magician's Nephew, because I thought they were brilliant magical books. So that's about it. Hope that answers the questions. Buy the book.